This entire week, we've been focused on one word: hope. Hope of what is to come. Hope of what could be. I want you to stop and think about a moment in your life in which you really needed hope. For some of you, you may have jumped right to an event, a big test that's going to be taking place in school, and you're the teacher. For others of you, it was something else. A car accident, and you didn't know what happened, what's going to happen next. Is everyone okay? Or maybe it's something else entirely. Something where you do not have control over it. Something in which you longed for a glimmer of hope, a light to break into the darkness, that you might be able to find some semblance of peace and understanding. Hope is what we cling to. It's what we need. When I was thinking about this for tonight's sermon, I kept thinking over and over again of one story. So I want to share that with you tonight. It was about the beginning of December. The snow had fallen after a few snowstorms and was already stacked quite high in the neighborhood. Thanksgiving was past, but not a distant memory. Still, preparations for Christmas were underway. At the Robertson household, they had put up the tree, put lights up on the house, and they were going to the store to pick up supplies to make some Christmas cookies and other goodies. Now they piled up the shopping cart and laughed with excitement of what their day would be and what they had in store. Driving home, they saw some smoke in the distance. It wasn't until they got closer, where they saw the red lights flashing, that they became worried. As they turned onto their own street, they saw 2 fire trucks, an ambulance, and 2 cop cars. All of them were doing their part to put out the flames that were overtaking their home that they had just left but an hour ago. Mom was in a state of shock as she put the car in park and just kind of sat there stunned. She told the kids, "Stay in the car. Let me go find out what's going on." So she went to go talk to the police officer. She said that it was her house that was on fire, and the police officer asked if they had any pets or anyone was at home. She said no. She was with the kids, and her husband was at work. The police told her that the fire department was doing everything that they could, and they're still working on it. She didn't realize, but now her kids were standing around her, hearing that message from the police officer. But they felt hopeless. They felt helpless. Their life, the memories, their stuff was going up in flames before their very eyes, and there was nothing that they could do. All that they had was what they were wearing. What seemed like days was really hours. Someone had told Gary, the father, that there was a fire at his house and nothing else. So he rushed home, where he found his wife and kids standing there in shock. He was so glad to find them safe and all right that he just hugged them and held them. Once the flames were under control, their house was still smoking. Everything was black. Once the firefighters came over, and one of them said the fire was out, but it would still be a few days before they could even go back to their home. They were still trying to figure out what happened, why this fire started. A few days had passed. Someone in the church had visited them at their hotel where they were staying and brought them lunch. And they brought with them a Christmas wreath. When Mrs. Robinson saw that, she looked at it and she just began to cry. Where am I supposed to hang that? The door on my house was burned up. Who would think that I needed a Christmas wreath of all things? Christine, one of the daughters, took it and placed it on one of the side tables. So they ate lunch together. Later, Christine went back and picked up that wreath and asked, what should we do with it? Christine, though, then began to read the note that was attached to it. And she began to cry. The note said this: in the midst of Advent, we long for hope. Hope that we would know God's love, that we might share in God's peace and celebrate the joy that Christ is with us even at the darkest of times. This Advent, may you know of Christ's presence today and always. Christine finally was able to stop crying and just simply said, I'm glad that we're all safe. God kept us safe by having all of us go to the grocery store, and I'm glad that we were all together. I know that all my toys are gone, but I don't care. I'm just glad that I have you. That afternoon, the family just simply cried together. That Christmas wreath meant more to the Robertsons, but especially now to Mrs. Robertson. Tonight, as we're focused still on that word of hope, I wanted to share with you that story. Whatever's going on in your life, whatever's happening, whatever thing you are most worried about, whatever you're longing for hope for, God knows about it too. In the midst of all of our darkness, God knows about that. In the midst of our fears, God knows about them. In the midst of our life, God knows about it all. I wanted you to hear that. Because for many of us, in the midst of our journey of life and faith, we do not always know what someone is going through. We don't always see on someone's facial expressions the struggle, the turmoil, the anguish, the fear, the doubt, the struggle that they're facing today, this week, or even this year. Yet that's part of the Advent story. We light a candle, a flame, something that could bring destruction to a people. Yet for us, it brings hope. In the midst of darkness, as it becomes darker, later, or stays darker later, and gets darker earlier, many people begin to wonder, where's the light of hope? We are a people who gather together and say, we found the hope. It's here in the midst of Advent that we celebrate and hope Christ's coming in our life. And we celebrate that all the more as individual families, as a people gathered together of faith, but above all, singing of Christ's praise in the world. Amen.